So how you doing, everybody? Keelan here from Horizon Speakers. I have the great honor of speaking with Mr. Roger Dawson today. Roger is the author of The Secrets of Power Negotiating, and which audio program actually happened to have sold $38 million worth. It's the best-selling business audio program ever. Prior to becoming a full-time professional speaker, Roger successfully ran one of California's largest real estate companies. And so I think he's got some excellent business background, which obviously informs his negotiation style and techniques. Roger was also inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1991, so I think his background speaks for itself, and I think it's definitely worth listening to. So for those of you interested in business and negotiation, I'd ask you to listen up. Roger, you're very welcome. Thanks very much for taking the time to join us today. What's the weather like there in, I imagine it's sunny California?
Keelan, I hate to rub it in, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's just a bright sunny day, and it's going to be this way for the next 2 months.
Oh, God. Well, we have a classic Irish sunny day, and in other words, it's overcast. So, Roger, I mean, I know you've got a breadth of experience in business and obviously as a speaker and author, but for today, we're going to kind of focus in on your secrets of power negotiating, because I think that's a subject that's very, I suppose it's important. It's an important life skill and not just a business skill. And I think it's fair to say that, oftentimes negotiating is thought about as, something only it happens in high levels of business or, in boardroom meetings and that kind of thing. But I know that you feel that it's actually part of everyday life.
A lot of people misunderstand the word negotiating. They think of it as a specialized art for crisis situations. So they say, well, I don't get called into prison riots or hijacking situations. Another thought that a lot of sales managers have is we don't negotiate. We have a fixed price and we don't negotiate. And I disagree with that philosophy completely, because negotiating is not the art of making concessions. It's the art of not having to make concessions. And if you don't have a lot of price flexibility in what you're selling, you need to be a much better negotiator than someone who does have a lot of price flexibility. So the truth of the matter is you're negotiating all the time. Anytime you're eyeball to eyeball, belly button to belly button, kneecap to kneecap with another human being, you are negotiating. And if you know how to do it right, if you know how to structure win-win negotiations so that not only do you get what you want, but they get what they want too, not only are you a lot more successful in business and your personal relationships, but a lot of the pressure and the friction and the stress goes out of your lives. Most salespeople hate what they call negotiating, that bit at the end. They become very good at prospecting for new business, qualifying to be sure they can afford them, building desire for their product or service, but in the back of their mind is lurking that uncomfortable thought, oh, pretty soon they're going to make me a super low offer. I hate that. I hate that negotiating part. If they would realize that it's all a negotiation, right from the very first contact you have with that person, you are negotiating. You're setting it up to eliminate that awkward part at the end when you get down to talking about money. And then they would be a lot more comfortable with the skill of negotiating.
Sure. And you kind of mentioned something there which I think is fascinating. And when I was reading your book over the last couple of days, in a week or 10 days, that I wasn't actually totally aware of it myself, even though I've done a lot of negotiating in business, but that, in fact, the mood in which you enter into a negotiation in the first place very much dictates the course that negotiation will take place. In other words, you can have a confrontational type of negotiation from the off, or you can come into the business negotiation with a whole kind of win-win mindset, if you want to call it that. And that in itself will probably totally change the outcome you're likely to have. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Most people think of negotiating as finding resolutions on little issues and working towards agreeing on everything. But win-win negotiating is the opposite of that. If you want to be a win-win negotiator, you need to add things to the negotiation, things that the other person may not have thought of that may be important to them. Add those things. Now you're creating an area where you can trade one or two things off, but both sides are winning. I actually teach what I call power negotiating. It's a little bit different than win-win negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
Win-win negotiating suggests that there's a third solution out there that neither side has thought of before. And win-win negotiators always talk about the two people who have an orange, and they both want it. They obviously can't both have it, so they negotiate that they will cut it in half. To be sure that it's fair, one will cut and the other one will choose. Now, while they're going through this process, they start talking to each other about what they want the orange for. Well, what do you know? One of them just wants the juice of the orange. The other one just wants the rind of the orange because they're baking a cake and that's all they need. So here's this magical third solution where everybody can have what they want and nobody has to give up anything. Well, sure. Maybe that happens in business, but you've got to be awfully uninformed to have that situation. I mean, I think about these two people who have an orange and they actually negotiated. One would cut and the other one would choose, but they didn't ask each other what they wanted the orange for. I mean, that's remarkably uninformed, and I guess that could happen in business. But it's more likely that you'll be sitting across the negotiating table from someone who wants what you've got. If they're buying from you, they want the lowest price they can possibly get. There's not going to be that third solution. What power negotiating suggests is that from the way you negotiate, you can get what you want in the negotiation, but still have the other person feeling that they want in the negotiation.
And you speak about these gambits that you use, which are like these kind of strategic moves, coming from the chess term, obviously. But so that, in your opinion, and I agree with you, that negotiating, it is actually more of a science than an art form, so to speak. There is actually steps you can take. Could you take us through some of those just to start with, I suppose, for people who haven't kind of thought about negotiating like this before, but I mean, two of your beginning moves, you want to call it that I personally like a lot.
I call them gambits, like a chess game. There are beginning gambits, middle gambits, ending gambits. So let's just go quickly through some of these gambits. Rule number one is never say yes to the first proposal, however good it looks. There is a predictable sequence of responses that will go through anybody's mind anytime you say okay to the first suggestion. And those two thoughts are, number one, I could have done better, and that has nothing to do with the price at all. It only has to do with the way that you react to their proposal. I could have done better, and the other thought is something's wrong here. I need to back off and take another look, because if they're willing to accept a proposal that I didn't think they would, there's got to be something going on that I didn't understand, so I need to back off. So you never say yes to the first proposal. You always ask for more than you expect to get in the negotiating process. Henry Kissinger, who was Richard Nixon's Secretary of State, opened up China, changed the whole trade of the world doing that. He went so far as to say that effectiveness at the bargaining table depends on your ability, that's how well you can do it, your ability to overstate your initial demands. Which is kind of interesting, because that's one of the top international negotiators of the last century saying, look, I'll tell you up front, if you're going to negotiate with me, I'm going to ask for more than you will give me. But even though you know that, it's still a very good negotiating principle to follow. So why would you ask for more? Well, number one, if you're a positive thinker, you think, well, I might just get it. I mean, you just don't know how the universe is aligned that day. God could be leaning over a crowd looking down at you and saying, wow, look at that fellow in Dublin. He's been working so hard for so long now. Let's give him a break. It could happen. The only way you're going to find out is to ask. Number two, it gives you some negotiating room, which makes it easier to get what you really want. A while back, my eldest son, Dwight, came to me, and he said, Dad, could I borrow your Corvette tonight? Corvette is a very fast two-seater sports car. And I said, why? Wait a minute. I don't think I feel comfortable with you doing that. And he looked really disappointed, and he said, well, could I borrow the minivan then? I said, well, all right, I guess I don't have a problem with you borrowing the minivan. And I didn't think anything of it until half an hour later. I looked out into the driveway. Dwight plays bass guitar with this group. He's loading these huge loudspeakers into the back of the minivan. Oh, wait a minute. He had absolutely no intention of borrowing the Corvette. He just knew, ask for more than you expect to get. Makes it quite easy to get what you really want. Another reason that applies to somebody selling something is asking for more raises the perceived value of your product. If a salesperson says, this is list price for you, I'll do it for this, you're immediately discounting that perceived value. So you leave that full number up there in writing if you possibly can. I mean, that's one of the 7 keys to credibility. People will believe what they see in writing that they won't believe when they just hear it. Let it sink in as the true value. If you have to make any concessions, make them very reluctantly and make the other side work for them. Now, what Henry Kissinger is talking about when he says ask for more than you expect to get is create an environment where the other side can have a win with you. If you go in with your very best proposal up front, there's no way that they can negotiate with you and have a win. And inexperienced negotiators won't do that. They'll say to their sales manager, I'm going out on this big proposal today. I know it's going to be competitive. Let me cut the price up front, otherwise you won't stand a chance of getting it. Experienced negotiators know the power of asking for more than you expect to get, reluctantly backing off of that position, servicing the perception that they want. And one more reason for asking for more than you expect to get, it prevents deadlocks when you're dealing with an egotistical person. And now what I mean by an egotistical person is someone who's proud of their ability to negotiate. You've all met these people, right? We call them horse traders in the States. Horse traders from way back. They're proud of their ability to negotiate. They're going to have a win with you, and if you don't give them room to have a win, the negotiation will deadlock on you. So that asking for more sounds like an obvious, very simple principle, but there's a lot of reasons for doing that, and that's the kind of thing we talk about at the seminar.
Great. And on the flip side, I suppose, of selling, if you're a buyer, I know you talked about this idea of flinching, so that, you know, no matter what someone says to you as the price of their product or service, you always kind of make this kind of theatrical flinch.
That's the one mistake that I see beginning negotiators make. Mm-hmm. When the other side asks them for concession, they don't react with shock and surprise.
Yeah.
In seminars, we set up a workshop exercise where we have buyers, sellers, and referees. And the referees are in a very interesting position because they've been in on the planning sessions of both sides. They know what each side's negotiating range is. So they see the buyers make a proposal to the sellers that the referee knows these buyers think this is an outrageously low proposal. They don't think for a moment the other person's going to go along with it. But they make the proposal and the other side doesn't appear to be that shocked. What they expected to happen was the other side would say, wait a minute, you wanted to do what? Oh, you got to be out of your mind. We're not going to do that. But instead, the seller's response is much more measured. And the sellers are saying, nah, I don't think we're prepared to go that way. And in an instant, the negotiation changes. You can see the change in the buyer's face. What a moment ago was an outrageously low proposal now becomes doable. Now they're thinking, well, I don't know, maybe we're not as far apart as we thought we were. Let's hang in. Let's be tough negotiators.
Speaking of tough negotiators, we're all very familiar with Donald Trump over here, and there's a particular little story you tell about how Donald Trump reluctantly sold the San Moritz Hotel to
Al Bond, Australian billionaire.
Australian billionaire, or one-time billionaire, I think, at this stage. But that's a very interesting negotiation position that Donald Trump took. Donald
Trump desperately needed to sell at that point. He was very highly leveraged in New York commercial real estate. He knew the market was overbuilt. He knew prices were going to come tumbling down, and he needed to raise cash quickly. He'd bought the San Moritz from the Hemslers, that's another investing family in New York, for $180 million. No, I'm sorry, $72 million. And he turned around and sold it to Bond for $180 million. It gave him the cash he needed to survive. But as desperately as he needed to sell that hotel, he was still saying, well, not the San Moritz. That's my favorite property. I'm never going to sell that. I'm going to put that in trust for my grandchildren. Look, anything else I have is to sell, make an offer, but not the San Moritz. Look, Alan, I do appreciate you coming all this way to make an offer. So, just to be fair to you, what is the very best price you would give me? Unless you realize what they're doing to you, you'll go from the low point of your negotiating range to the midpoint, maybe even the high point, before the negotiations even start. Mm-hmm. One of the things I stress in the seminars, Keelan, is that a negotiated dollar is a bottom line profit dollar. It's not a gross revenue dollar. It's one of those rare, hard-to-find bottom line dollars. If you're running a business in a tight economy like this, but you're doing okay, you may be making 10% of the bottom line profit. If you were able to just increase your selling prices 2%, which is almost nothing, 2% and still have the same volume, and if you were able to negotiate 2% better buys from your suppliers, now you're working with 4%. You are increasing your profit, not 4%, but 40%, because you're making 10% and you're saving 40%. You'll never make money faster than you will when you're negotiating. I don't care if you do brain surgery in your spare time. You will never make money faster than you will when you're negotiating.
One of the critical, obviously, starting negotiation is one thing, and then getting into the thick of it. But I suppose where a lot of people fail is oftentimes in kind of closing the deal, I suppose. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of negotiations break down, be it in the selling of buying a property or whatever. What about your kind of ending gambits in terms of? I know you have a couple of kind of golden rules, like never offer to split the price. Split the difference, should I say, and also it's constant nibbling. Could you speak a little bit about just some of those closing or ending gambits you use?
Yes, a big mistake that a lot of salespeople make is that they throw prices at the buyers, hoping the buyer will say yes to one of their prices. You just shouldn't do that. Now, if you're selling something, you've got to be willing to say, this is what I'll sell it for, the full list price. But anything less than that, you want the suggestion to come from the buyer. You need them to be saying, I will do business with you if you will lower your price to this. Get them to commit to a position. And then you bracket that in your objective so that if you end up in the middle, as so often happens, you get what you want. If they can get you to state your best price first, then all they have to do is bracket that so that if you end up in the middle, they get what they want. So that's a big part of what goes wrong at the end of the negotiation. The salesperson is getting more and more desperate and is throwing numbers at the other side, hoping they'll say yes to one of their numbers. These buyers go to seminars too. Guess what they get taught in their seminars? I tell you, buyers get together and they have a drink or two and they start bragging and they'll say, I can get any salesperson to admit that they are just selling a commodity, not a product. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a rocket to go to Jupiter for all they know. But my first objective, I'm going to get that salesperson to believe that I can buy it somewhere else for less money. It's a commodity. Well, salespeople all too often fall into that product. I've been doing these seminars for, usually it's an annual sales meeting of the company that I speak. Sometimes it's a national association having a meeting. I have only ever met one company that said price is not an issue with us. No one would ever buy anything just based on price. But it's a great idea to put that into the salesperson's mind. And some of these buyers are very blatant about it. I don't care about anything but price. That's what I'm here to do. I'm paid to beat you up on price. That's the only thing we're going to talk about in this conversation. But nobody would ever buy anything just based on price.
Absolutely. And it's a difficult thing for a sales guy if to try and get someone off the price, because if they're kind of totally fixated on what the price is. I think you mentioned this. I was listening to your audio program actually recently as well, and then you mentioned a story about someone was buying a piece of property. I think it was a piece of land or something, and they were telling you about the price of the land, the deal, and what could be done with the property. You kind of said, "Okay, hold on. Tell me about the people selling it. Tell me about them. Who are they? What's their life story? What's the situation?" I think that's very interesting because it opens up a whole new vista.
The answer is never with the thing. The answer is with the people. What do the people want?
Yeah, so once you kind of know what their makeup is and where they're at in their life, you might be able to kind of talk about how you can help them out on that. And that kind of pushes aside the price as an issue, So
Keelan, let me just mention something about the Irish economy, because there's a real danger here. When we go through, and we in the States, we've gone through this tough economy too. When you get into a tough economy, everybody starts cutting corners and shaving their price a little bit and accepting reduced profits just to get through this bad patch. But the thing is, when you come out of that bad economy, you need to start building that profit up again. All too often, people stick with that low profit margin as they come out of a recession. So this is a good time for your business associates to be learning negotiating skills. Get those profit margins back up where they belong.
I couldn't agree with you more. We certainly need to do that. I mean, I think prices have kind of come to I wouldn't say an all-time low, but certainly coming close to it, I think. And eventually it's going to start rising the other way. So certainly business owners are going to have to look at not fall into trap of thinking the price they had 3 years ago was the same price they'll be charging in 3 years' time. But so Roger, there's no doubt about it. You're a seasoned business guy, and you've got great negotiation techniques and to share with people. But we're always fascinated when we speak to our speakers and authors and great thinkers out there about what was the kind of key influence for them, maybe earlier on in their life before their career took off, and what were the key catalysts? Was there certain mentors or books they read, or I don't know, even a song they heard that was very instrumental in driving them in a certain direction in their life? I wonder, could you share with us a bit about that?
Yes, I have to say that until I became a speaker, it was not anything I thought about doing before. But I went through a midlife crisis when I was about 42. I was running a big real estate company here in Los Angeles, 28 offices, 540 sales associates. Big company, making very good money. But I was sitting behind a desk 6 days a week running this company. And when you go through the midlife crisis, that's when you suddenly realize you're going to die one day. And I just didn't want to sit behind a desk for the rest of my life. So I went out and started giving talks to boards of realtors, and then other people started asking me to come and give a talk to their company. And that's how I got into speaking. And it's just been great for me. I've been able to travel all over the world. I just got back from doing a program in Trinidad, which is my 114th country that I've visited.
Oh, congratulations.
There's about 182 countries in the United Nations, so you're getting down to some very small countries by the time you get to 114.
And have you ever had the opportunity to speak in Ireland before, actually, as a matter of interest?
I haven't spoken in Ireland, but I've spent 2 different week-long vacations there, driven all the way around my island. I love Ireland. People are so friendly. I'm never sure whether to admit that I was born in England or not. Are you guys over that now?
Yeah, I think we're over that. Just about,
Yeah, 600 years is really not that long.
Yeah, look, it's just, it's a blip, But, no, I think Ireland, Irish people are quite savvy negotiators, I'd say. I'm not too sure what your own experience is there, but I think we have that sort of background. We've managed to avoid 2 world wars. We've managed to, negotiate our way through the peace process and what have you. So I think, and not to mention our own independence. So yeah, certainly I think Irish people will probably qualify as skilled negotiators. But I suppose, and in terms of your own drives and interests right now, Roger, could you share with us what makes you get up in the morning, apart from the alarm clock maybe, but what's your kind of key motivation now at this stage for you?
Well, I love going sailing. I have a 36-foot sailboat at the California Yacht Club, and we sail out on the Pacific Ocean, sail over to Catalina Island, that's about 30 miles, and moor there for a few days. It's wonderful over there. And golf, I live just across from my golf club, the Hacienda Golf Club, which is one of the oldest ones in California. So I have a lot of friends over there. And during the winter, I try and get some skiing in, snow skiing.
Well, sounds like you're having a blast.
Yes, I love it. And I'm looking forward to coming to Ireland and doing a seminar for Horizon.
Absolutely, and we're looking forward to having you.